Tennessee defensive back Boo Carter is back at full practice for the Vols. Boo Carter, just to recap the story, going into the start of fall camp last week, there had been reports that he had missed multiple team meetings. His agent came out and said he had ghosted him. He had hired a new agent, one that was responsible for trying to strong-arm Ace Bailey, the NBA draft pick out of Utah, which ended up not working. This was the latest in a string of moments where it seemed like Boo Carter was flirting with the transfer portal, even though he never officially entered, dating back to December, when he randomly announced he was staying when no one thought he was even leaving. Now, all of this happened over different points, and all the reports close to it were that it was not about NIL money. We deduced that it was about wanting to play more of a role on offense, which he did in the spring. But then again, the ghosting in the summer happened, so we didn't know what was happening. Josh Heupel speaks to the media at the start of fall camp last week and says that Boo Carter is with the team, but there's things he has to do to work his way back into the rotation. The leadership council of the team, the player-led team, we find reports saying that they were going to demand things of him before they would accept him back. All of last week, Boo Carter was not practicing with he was practicing, but he wasn't in full practice. He was off. He would do certain workouts and then would be off to the sidelines doing other things. However, on Tuesday, Boo Carter was a full participant in practice, which speaks to the idea that it sounds like Boo Carter has officially returned to practicing fully with the team. The question becomes, what does that look like going forward? Everybody practices with the team. Has Boo Carter already worked his way back into the starting rotation after just a week of having to work to prove himself? That is today's tough question, and it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. The poll question is up right here. Will Boo Carter start in week 1? Does him being back at practice mean he's already back in the first team rotation? Now, Tennessee secondary, let's talk about what it looks like right now, okay? Because we know that Jerron McCoy is not 100%. So he may not even be starting at cornerback to start the year. Let's discuss what that means for everything else, okay? So I'm sorry, there's a little background noise. I'm trying to fix that real quick. Technical difficulties. Just give me 1 second to handle that. Sorry about that. All right, so what I was trying to say was that Boo Carter, let's discuss where Tennessee goes and if they have options in the secondary without Boo Carter. So here's their options. Assuming Jerron McCoy is not 100%. They could start Ricky Gibson III at cornerback. They could theoretically start Colton Hood at cornerback as well. And they could start Jalen McMurray at the star. Now, they could start Jalen McMurray at the other cornerback spot and have Colton Hood be the star. We already found out that they've been working out Colton Hood at multiple spots on the offense or on the defense. So they would have options. And then Andre Turrentine has one of the safety spots locked up. The other one could come down to Jordan Thomas, Idris Farouk, or Caleb Beasley. The point I'm making here is while Tennessee needs on Jerron McCoy because that's the only, I believe, island lockdown corner they have, it's not like they don't have options to mix and match in the secondary for Tim Banks and Willie Martinez if Jerron McCoy and Boo Carter are not starting week 1. However, because of Boo Carter's talent and because of the fact that Jerron McCoy is not 100%, I think Tennessee's making more exceptions for Boo Carter than they typically would, meaning, yes, he will start for the Vols week 1. Whether or not that's a good principle is a different story because you've had Boo Carter flirt with the transfer portal twice. But sometimes you make concessions when you have to make concessions and you're trying to build a program. Also, another reason that Boo Carter might end up starting more than he should deserve and maybe working with the team is because Tennessee all of a sudden looks like they may need him at the wide receiver spot. Now, the Mike Matthews and Chris Brazzell injuries seem minor. All reports are they'll be back at full go this week, but the truth is those are the two go-to wideouts. Otherwise, you have to turn to true freshmen. Braylon Staley's your slot guy, but you may have to move Braylon Staley to the outside and have Boo Carter actually play in the slot. You may actually need Boo Carter now, okay, depending on who steps up, because there's Joaquin Dotson, also another true freshman. Amari Jefferson is banged up. Trey Weary is a walk-on. So I think the injuries at skill positions make it almost crucial that Boo Carter is ready to go when things happen. I think that Boo Carter, look, here's the truth of the matter. You can't punish him forever. One of the things I talk about for a while is that once you make the decision to move on from something someone's done and they do all the stuff that you say they need to do to work themselves back on the team, you can't then hold things against them. This is like a relationship, just for instance, okay? If you make the decision to forgive someone who cheated on you and they have to work back to gain their trust, if they do all the things that you say they needed to do to regain their trust and you choose to forgive them, you can't hold that against them later in the future. That's it. You made that decision. That is your choice. You made your bed. Lie in it, whether or not it's good or bad. That doesn't mean you have to forgive. I'm saying once you make the decision to do that, you can't continue to punish people. That's a big issue, okay? And I think Boo Carter, that situation is, truth be told, whatever Josh Heupel said he had to do to get back on the field, if he got back on the field, then you got to go with him. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
The poll question up: will Boo Carter start week 1? 76% say yes, 24% say no. It looks like you guys think Boo Carter is going to start week 1. I agree. Again, if Jermon McCoy were 100%, I think this would actually be a bit of a different story. I think Josh Heupel would be willing and happy to say, you're going to have to work your way back onto the field and you're not starting week 1. You may not even start all of September, because then you could have Jermon McCoy at the number 1 cornerback spot, Ricky Gibson at the other spot. You could have Colton Hood take that nickel spot that everybody's talking about. Then you'd have Andre Turntine, Jordan Thomas, Caleb Beasley, Jalen McMurray. You could work all those guys around. You could even work Colton Hood in at safety. There'd be a lot more options. But the fact of the matter is, Josh Heupel entered fall camp knowing Jermon McCoy was not 100%. That was very clear. He then had to adjust on the fly with his secondary. And taking that into account, he needs Boo Carter a little bit more than maybe he wanted to. So he probably made some concessions. Well, if those concessions were made, you have to accept those concessions. You can't retroactively, the next time Boo Carter does something you don't like, you can't retroactively hold this over him. You just can't do that. That's not how life works. Once you make the decision to forgive somebody, you forgive them. If there's things and there's stipulations that you say they have to do to work their way back, fine. But once they do all those things, then you move on. That's how life works. Now to the message board real quick, I want to point out a few things. We also pay these players. David Speak says we also pay these players, and also paying them to sit on the bench is a waste of money. That's a great point. When you're paying someone, you can't sit there and punish them on the bench. It's not. It's the NFL now. Adam says it's at some point it's not fair to punish someone forever. That is very true. So Orange Blood says at least Boo gives us a good chance of a short field with his punt return abilities. That's a very, very, very good point. So I think a lot of these points are very fair. But yes, I think this is all true. And then Adam says if Boo fulfills his requirements, he's still better than his back. If he's going to start, we play whoever earns a spot. So he just has to put in the work to make up for the slacking. Sly Dog has a decent point. Don't start him, but he is the first sub and back to regular game reps ASAP. I mean, I guess you could say like don't start him for the week to like humiliate him to a certain degree. That might work too. And so we're going to have to see how this all plays out. Although a response to Sly Dog, David Speaks with a great point. In theory, that works, but Syracuse is capable of beating us, and if we don't have our best players. I agree, David Speaks, but if you don't start Boo Carter for a series and you can't beat Syracuse, you're in very big trouble. Now, Orange Blood asks, is Hood our other starting quarterback? We don't know, Orange Blood. That's a good question. I thought they brought in Colton Hood to be the number one cornerback to offset the injury to Jamon McCoy. But then Tim Banks and Willie Martinez said last week that he's actually working out in a lot of different spots in the secondary. So it looks like he's at a utility defensive back, and I think they're just going to stick with Ricky Gibson as the number one cornerback, but we're going to see how that all plays out.